What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Black Desert. So this video, I'm going to be bringing you another guide on progression. Now, a lot of people have been asking for this, and it might be a little bit confusing to newer players and or people just in general, whether you're fresh starting out or you're a mid-tier player and you don't know where to go. So if you're confused, I'll try to do my best on showing you where to progress and how to build your character in a way. Now, I know there's a lot of different routes to go, whether your class is more focused on like DR or evasion, or what kind of crystals you want, whether you're like PvP, PvE. There's a lot of stuff in here that I'll try to focus on, but this is more just a general guide on how to progress your gear. And we're gonna start with, let's say, as a baseline, you played your season character and you're full pen Tuvala. After that, you're wondering, where do I go from here? Now, realistically, the TLDR version is you get the best upgrades, like more AP or DP, wherever you're going, for the lowest amount of silver if you are just buying all your gear, right? So, with that said, that still is confusing because you don't know where you're going afterwards. I'll try to talk about artifacts, but that's something later where you just get along the way. And, oh, that's gonna bother me, flashing red. Hold on. Anyway, so let's say you're full Tuvala or full pen Tuvala. Your gear looks like this, more or less, full pen. After this, you're probably wondering, okay, so where do I go? What pieces should I upgrade next? And first of all, we're gonna look at all the prices. This is at least for the North American server. It might be different for anyone else, but the concept still stays the same. So after graduating from season, you get an option to pick one piece of gear, whether it's weapon or armor, and you can convert that into a Tet boss gear. Now, which one should you change? Assuming this is your first ever character you've ever made, what would you go, or like what route should you go? By the time you finish season, I would say you should know whether you want to go Succession or Awakening as your primary. Obviously, you can play through both, and if you enjoy both, play both of them. However, I do think that for the most part, your main hand should be the best way, or like the first thing you should go for. So I think Zarkas are pretty cheap at the moment, and also like the best thing you should do. Plus, we'll talk about the pen, armor, accessory, and weapon questline. So, straight out after finishing season, you get one piece of gear, as I mentioned. And I would honestly pick your like main hand weapon as your first boss gear that you want to start going for pen at. And the reason why we go for that, let's use Zarka as an example, because that's, I think, what it actually gives you. So at the end, you convert one of your Tuvala pieces, and assuming it's at pen, which it should be, you're gonna get a Tet weapon or so, armor. Now, I would go the main hand weapon because it does give you more accuracy, and that allows you to either grind better places, or if you're into the PvP, more accuracy is always better, believe it or not. And we'll get into more details later. That's more for like advanced stuff. So anyway, now you are Tuvala with your first weapon boss gear piece, and that's a Tet Zarka or whatever. Now, the reason why you're going to want to do that is just because of the accuracy, and main hand is always going to be used whether you're Succession or Awakening, and just the accuracy stats are always good. Now, if you are playing Awakening after that, you're probably going to want to go the Dandelion route. And what I would do is do the pen, weapon, and armor quest line to get your first free piece from there. Now, the reason why we do that is because it's significantly cheaper to go through the pen quest line route the first like 1 or 2 times. And then after that, it's like the same as just buying it off the market, and then you'd get a resale value. But by that time, I think you'll be fine. So the first 2 things I would always go for are the main hand and Awakening weapon. That allows you to grind new spots, and just try out new things, and hopefully you'll be fine in the future going off of that. So assuming you have full Tuvala armor, that's the equivalent of Tet in boss gear, where do you go now? So there's two routes you go: evasion and DR. However, evasion is one of those things that's good, but at very high-end level things when you're like full pen and Capris. So I would always go to DR route first of all, and by DR I mean like Uragon shoes, Bag's glove, and Griffin helmet. I'll just show you these now. So the Griffin helmet is this one, and the reason why you're going to want this, you're going to have it at Tet equivalent, is because if you look at the stats on the top, it gives you more DR, whereas like if you're going to evasion route, you'd be using heave up until you're ready to go Libresca, which is super late game stuff. And let's show you an example of evasion and DR shoes or something, actually. Okay, so there's mostly two routes. I would say skip the Black Star armors, and the reason why you'd skip it is because it's a dead-end upgrade. I've always told people this. Once you get your Black Star to pen, that's the equivalent of a Capris 10 in whichever other shoes, and then later on, it's harder to get a pen Black Star than it is to Capris 10 your regular shoes, and then eventually a few years later from now is going to be an upgrade to like whatever fallen god. And so if you're trying to go the route to make it yourself, it's significantly harder to make a pen Black Star than it is to just buy Capris. One is very safe and probably a bit cheaper. But anyway, so here we are, we're looking at this. DR shoes would be Uragon, evasion would be Muskin. If you look at the stats at the top, not the DP, but the numbers under it, it is evasion and DR. If you just click on it, and then you'll see one gives significantly more in the route of the other compared to that. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is the DR route is probably the place I would go for most people up until you get to endgame stuff, when you're like full pen and then Capris leveled in your armor and stuff. Then I would consider making the transition, because it doesn't matter if you're evasion early on. If you don't have enough evasion, people are still gonna just kill you easily. So anyway, plus I think for grinding and PvE, DR is for the most part generally the way to go. I could definitely feel the difference when I played evasion back in the day, and it would just be scarier. So anyway, which route do you go from there? How much is all of this going to cost? Well, depending on your server, I would just look at whatever the cost of like a Tet or pen is, whichever, if you plan on going the enhancing route. I would personally just buy it, because right now, I think on all servers, getting pen boss gear is probably cheap, minus like Libresca, Fallen God, and Black Stars. So whichever one is the cheapest at pen, I would go that route first. But always, I would probably say the chest piece armor goes first, because that just gives highest DP. And you do look at the brackets eventually. So this number is important, but if you want to get more in depth about it, so you look at the my stats, and yeah. But anyway, so if you hover over here, you see like the number and then a plus number in a bracket. That's what we call the brackets, and every like 4 AP you get boosted up into a new bracket. So let me just show you for example. You see the AP in Awakening, 196, 181. Now, if I boost myself up into a new bracket with Nuver, it'll be like 203 and 200. Now, it may not always be the best route to go. Nuver versus Kudum, depending on what you do, PvP, PvE, what class you are. Some classes don't even use it. But anyway, that's the concept of it. So, always always go for weapons and then the cheapest amount of armor you can first. And then accessories are something you just kind of get over time. Eventually, you'll do a season or enough seasons, and then you'll get gear like... hold up, where is it? I don't even remember what character I put it on. Yeah. So eventually, if you do enough seasons, the rewards are guaranteed. Like, these are called Kaposha. And they're basically the equivalent of a Tet boss gear. So, like a Tet Ogre Ring, I think this is like a Tet Bassi belt or equivalent. And then the Kaposha rings are something that you get for seasons as well. And if you get level 61, 62, 63 for the first time, I believe you get like a Tet version. So those are temporary placeholders up until you get, you know, actual accessories. And so that should hold you off until you get full pen in your gear, which actually does take a bit of time. So anyway, after that, you want to kind of look into, do you like PvP? Do you like PvE? And the route I would go is Kudum and Nuver. Now, the way you look at these are sub-weapons. I'll use the ornamental knot because I'm a DK. It's easier to explain. So Kudum and Nuver, these come from the bosses itself, or you can just buy it off the market. Honestly, it's 2022, just buy it off the market. Now, Kudum is for PvE, so like grinding, and usually it'll give you a lot more monster damage, and you probably have a Tet equivalent at this point. So you see how the item effect says it gives more damage against monsters? Yeah, that's good when you're grinding, so you should probably have that. I would honestly recommend newer players to just get a Kudum first, because that'll allow you to grind newer spots and just try newer areas while keeping it a little bit safer, because it does give a little bit of DP. It allows you to experiment with new grind spots, what might give you more money per hour grinding and whatnot. And then some classes don't even go to Nuva route, but if you PvP, some do, and this just gives you a lot of AP and not a lot of DP, so basically more damage, and that's good. So yeah, that's something you look on later on, depending on what you think you're doing, but I would definitely choose that later on. And then the whole Black Star route is something I do believe is good. However, it is very hard to enhance. It is also very hard to buy at Penn, at least. Tets you can just get off the market. And I think that Black Star is, well, actually the real thing is Black Star is better for PvE because it gives you extra stats for like monster damage. Whereas if you're just capricing it up later on at endgame, then it doesn't matter. Zarka, Dandelion, Kudum, Nuver, if you caprice it, it's basically the equivalent. The changes are very minor, so it's like a few accuracy difference versus, or at least for the offhand it is, a few accuracy versus some monster damage or defenses. So yeah, eventually the goal would be to get Black Star, but as a newer to mid-tier player that's working on progressing, then it's probably a little bit different. At this stages in the game, you could technically grind for the best in slot right away, but over the years I've been playing this game, I'm just going to tell you how I would do it the most efficient way. Because if you're, for example, stuck at like, what is season ending at? Like, assuming you're maxed gear season, you're probably at like 240-ish AP, and that's pretty good for a lot of things. But if you want to push past that, you're probably wondering, where do you go? And that's where we're going. So in terms of armor, let's say you already have the boss gear, like more or less Pen. Which armors do you go? I would go chest armor, and then probably shoes, gloves, and then helmet last. Now this is different because you get Libresca, which is the end game part. But when it comes to capricing items, which is let me show you. These stones, you will probably need them forever. Now, you put X amount into your boss gear piece. I would recommend not putting it in Tet unless you know what you're doing, because eventually, if you upgrade your gear, let's say you have a Tet piece with a level X Capris level in it, right? If it upgrades to Pen, you lose a lot of those levels because it upgraded. Now, you really want a Capris at Pen level only, and that way you get the maximum value and you don't actually just light money on fire. So that is what getting extra stats in your gear is. The way it'll look is, you see it says Capris level 9, then it gives bonus stats. You want to do it at Pen, and that's where you get the bonus stats from. Now, you may be wondering, after that, I guess I should mention before we do anything, you should Capris your gear equally. So like if you're going from nothing, level 1 in your armor, go all level 1 in your armors, then all level 2 in your armors, all level 3. Because it gets progressively more expensive to put more Capris in your gear, and then the stat gain per cost obviously increases. Therefore, you should go equalize your gear in terms of Capris levels at the same time. Don't just push one to level 10 and then while the rest of them is level 0, because you'll get technically less stats along the way. Whereas if you equalize it, it's more and more efficient cost-wise as well. So after that, we talked about weapons and armors in the order I would go for. So where do you go from now? So let's assume you are full Pen, armor and weapons now. Whether you have Capris in it or not a big deal. You just get Capris over time. So you have two routes to go. You have accessories, or you have a alchemy stone. Now, whether you're playing offensive, defense class, there's a few things to look at. You go into the alchemy tab. Destruction, obviously, is the offensive. Protection is defensive. Life is obviously life skilling. So here's the route I would go. If you are just starting out and you don't have any alchemy stones, let's say you're using spirit stones because you got them along the way from grinding, where do you go from here? What I did was, personally, I went from sharp alchemy stone, the yellow one. Oh, well, I guess I don't know how to draw sharp alchemy stone, right? I went from this one all up to a Vel. I skipped the resplendent one just because it was like, it didn't seem really worth it. Well, like, technically this gives more effect, but the Vel's Heart gives 3 AP, and 3 AP on your sheet is worth a lot more than the effect up until you get to Splendid, which is a little bit different. This is a very endgame plus very hard to get item. So let's just say most people are going to be using a Vel's Heart for up until you become like the 1%. And then after that, you want to look into upgrades. But for the most part, most people won't get there. Wait till you just get a Vel's Heart, and then you'll be fine. Protection route is a little bit different. I went the Resplendent route because it was slightly cheaper than the Destruction. So, for example, like, you know how the Destruction is like 5.3 billion? Well, the Resplendent Alchemy Stone of Protections is like 4 billion. Now, I am very skeptical of telling people to get a Protection Stone because it's very specific, and generally, for the most part, just a Destruction Stone will be good enough for you. Whereas if you're getting a Protection Stone, you kind of know what you're doing already, like, and you want a defensive build. So for me personally, like, I even have a Protection Stone. I don't really use it, but I don't want to sell it either because it's just like, hey, if I want to play another class, I could use it. But yeah, so I don't really use the Protection Stone as much as I just use the Vel's Heart. And so it's very, very specific uses. You kind of have to know what you want to do with it already. So after that, in terms of accessories, it's very straightforward. Which one gives the most AP, or if you're going the DP route, which one gives the most stats for the least amount of money? But if I had to guess correctly, probably I would go the ring route first, and then necklace, despite the saying ring, necklace slot, and then you go the belt route, and then earrings would last. That's, I think, at least how it is on NA in terms of prices. But up until then, just use the Capocia stuff that you get from Season until you're ready to go for a pen directly, because that'll be just fine. So, yeah, there we go. Now we get into the more intermediate to advanced level. What kind of crystals do you want? And here's a list of the crystals I use. If you want to take a screenshot, go for it. So a lot of these are the same for most people. I'll tell you to change spots where you could go different routes. Now, my crystals are more tailored towards PvP, but there are a few slots that all classes will use. So if you look into the main hand weapon where I have the Elcars, these are considered best in slot because they give accuracy, which is good for all classes, and ignore all resistances. So ignore all resistance is good, and it's like an offensive thing. And that means, like, if you do any CC, you'll ignore 10% of the enemy resistance. And so if that CC wouldn't have landed before, you now have a higher chance to land that CC. So, alchemy, or not alchemy stones, crystal slots. This is one that time changes. If you are like on a budget, Elcars and precision crystals are very similar. So basically you get 4 less accuracy, but you also don't spend 60 mil. Now, honestly, these days, I would honestly recommend just getting an Elcar because these are very cheap right now. Because Gyfin is a top tier spot, Elcars are very cheap. Now, I remember back in the day when paying like 300 mil hard max for them, and now they just kind of go down. So if you are grinding, just go to Elcar route. Pretty much every class uses it. Unless you are a very high-end 1%, then you might switch them out. But for the most part, you'll probably just use Elcars or Precisions. Now, this is where things get a little bit tricky. Let's just go through all of the ones that other classes use the same. You're going to be using a special evasion crystal. Now, whether you get the Jin one or not, that's just a later on upgrade. Where is the magic crystals? Into the... Actually, let's just search it up. Okay, so special evasion. You are using this because the special attack evasion 10% is pretty much best in slot. Doesn't matter what class you're using or you're on, you use this crystal. Now, this is the baseline, the budget option. Obviously, there's 0 on the market right now because like a year ago, they made some change where you can't get them as easily. And these are all the same thing. They give the special evasion plus 10, which is what you want. However, you use these because these give the extra HP 30, 50, and 100. So it's just extra HP points on the side. But for the most part, you just want the special attack evasion. And these are significantly cheaper. Now, what special attack evasion does is, like, let's say it's hard to describe what a special attack actually is in this game, but my understanding of it is, like, if someone hits you with a, like, I don't know, a special attack, it's not that it reduces the damage, which in a way it does. It's hard to describe what this crystal actually does, but like once it clicks and you understand, then it works. So how do I describe it? It's like you don't take less damage, you just have an evasion and you don't get CC'd, or I don't even know if it's like CC'd. It's just you can avoid like the extra hits, if that makes sense. Next, we have our gloves. We have Vipers. Technically, you want Jin Vipers because you want the accuracy. As I mentioned previously, accuracy is very important. And let's go the Viper route. Let's see. Okay. So, Jin Vipers, they're kind of expensive. What you want to do is get it for here. You want accuracy. That is the only reason you want this crystal. Budget options are these. They give you 12. And attack speed versus cast speed is... Look at your class. Under your battles thing. What class are you playing? You look at whether your attack... If you are one of these classes, you're an attack speed. And then if it says spell damage, if you are not one of those classes, then your spell damage, which is like wizard, witch, and then things that obviously are magic. Then you get the other one. So you see how it gives 2 attack speed, whereas this one gives 2 cast speed. Yeah, pick the one that's actually proper for you if you want to min-max that extra speed stat. But ultimately, the fact that you can buy a Jin Viper, you just want the accuracy as a higher priority. It is expensive, but it is worth it. And then the other ones are just the budget options. Let's see, what do we have here? Okay, so those are pretty much the ones that all classes will use at the same time. Now, where do we go from here? Oh boy, this is going to be very tricky because you can switch out a lot of spots. Now, let me go with the helmet. Helmet and shoes are what I would consider the flex spots where you could change it out as you will. And so keep in mind, these are more for PvP tailored. I do switch out my crystals every now and then, depending on what I feel like is more important. So I use Harpias because it gives damage to humans, and obviously that means PvP. And then the RBF crystals in my shoes because it gives more resistances. And for the longest time, I really do think that resistances are kind of a meme, but with the way it is now, basically at high-end PvP, whoever gets CC'd first usually loses. So whether you think it's a meme or not, I think it works for me anyway. So anyway, what can you do instead? You go to the crystal route, and then you will look for helmet. So what I did previously, if you are evasion, you'll be going with the Harpias. If you aren't evasion and you want something else, you could go into the versatile. So I went the Whom route. Let's look at these ones, the Han Whoms. And because defensive stats are always good, because it allows you to not only grind PvE and try out new spots and be a little bit safer, it also gives you defensive stats in PvP, which is something that if you don't know what you're doing, you put 2 Whoms in your helmet, and then if you don't think you need resistances or you just think you need more stats, you could put 2 Whoms in your shoes as well instead of the resistances. And I know a lot of classes that don't use RBF crystals because they just have more protection skills or they have more like evasion. So these are actually less useful for other classes, whereas for me particularly, I think it's fine. So you get the 4-piece Whom effect. You want to use the Han ones because these just give less stats than the upgraded one. So anyway, the way it works is if you have a 2-piece set or a 4-piece set, each crystal, okay, so you see this usage line, the first set of blue text, every crystal will give that stat. And then if you have 2, you get the 2-piece set, and if you have 4, you get the 4-piece set. So 4, you look at the 4-piece set plus the top line. 2 and 4 do not stack. It adds on to the existing line in a way. So if you have 4 pieces, you do not get to 300 HP from 2 and 4. You get the 4-piece plus the usage line, so it's ultimately, I think it adds up to like 270 instead of like 300. So that's just how it works. Now later on, you'll look into the offhand line. Usually corrupted crystals are just the things people go for most of the time because it just more damage helps you grind faster. I use it for both Kudum and Nuver, but that's just, I think, Dark Knight in particular. If you didn't want to use it for glass cannons, what you would do, another route would be a lot of these. So red spirit crystals for PvP on option. These are a lot of I would say these crystals are more for PvP because they ignore certain CCs. So depending on your class, it might actually be useful. But these are kind of like the, I wouldn't say budget options, because these could get very expensive, just not right now. So what you could do if you don't want the PvP and all you like doing is grinding, you could go for the Awakened Spirit Crystal, which you actually get from the Valencia questline. Or you could go for the Voltara's route and the Rebellious. These just give more HP and it helps you grind. AP, they're not bad, but it really just depends on what you want. Or if you just want more crit damage, that works too. So honestly, I just think this is good for everything. Just more damage. You take more damage too, but you do a lot more. Now this is more the end game option because your sub-weapon, or not sub-weapon, Awakening does not have crystal slots by default. You have to upgrade it with either a Karanda's Heart or a Garmoth's Heart. And then the Karanda's Heart gives 1 crystal slot, Garmoth is 2. Garmoth is actually very expensive. So yeah, so if you have Awakening crystal slots, you could also put 4 Hooms here, like 2 in your helmet and 2 in your Awakening slots, and then have whatever you want in there. But I have this for PvP. If you want to switch it up and you like PvE, there are a few routes to go. This is the PvP crystal. This is the PvE one. You could also put versatile ones in here as well. And if you are going the evasion route, here's what I would do. Let me just go down the list real quick. Evasion, use Harpias, gives HP evasion. Armor route. Honestly, just no matter what you're doing, I'm pretty sure the special evasion crystals are the way to go. If not, then what were the other ones? Honestly, I feel like I'm just giving you bad information if I tell you not to get special evasion. But I actually can't find it. Well, anyway, special evasion. Gloves. Vipers. Honestly, Vipers are just the best way to go. I see some people use RBF Vipers. That just gives, that's just straight PvP. You have to like know what you're doing already to use these. Everything else is kind of irrelevant. I've seen people use Dark Fang, but honestly, just Vipers the way to go. Shoes. I tried these for the movement speed and stuff, the stamina. It's just not the same. Hystria is a very popular one because it is a PvP one. Otherwise, adamantines for resistances, or the Hoom route as well, because a lot of spots are, you just want DP and stuff. So those are the crystals that I recommend if you want to take a quick screenshot. This is PvP tailored, so keep that in mind. But main hand weapon, chest piece armor, and gloves are for the most part going to be the same for all classes. After that, you kind of just tailor the crystals to your playstyle. What do you do? And so I guess this is actually what I do PvP and PvE with. I don't swap them out when I grind, so this is why I get less trash loot than someone who tailors himself towards straight PvE. But that's okay. I enjoy doing like Node Wars, RBFs, just open world PvP. So I enjoy that stuff. That's why I built it that way. But yeah, we talked about pretty much all of the important things. Well, we start from when you end your season and you have full Pen Tuvala, and then where to go from there. The TLDR, once again, really is most stats, least amount of silver. And then after that, it goes from upgrading your gear all the way to high end. And then once you get to high end, you start to think about, hey, where do I start going the evasion route if I want to? And the way you convert into evasion is not when you get pen, it's when you have enough silver to convert like Capris 9 and up pen, or like in your pen gear. That's when you can start considering it. And even then, if someone has like Capris 9 evasion, you still have to be like the proper class. I wouldn't say proper class, because you could technically do it with all classes, just some classes are built different for evasion, whereas like for example Dark Knights are more accuracy focused, whereas a ninja or Kuno has more evasion. So if you don't know what your class specialty is, it really just is down here somewhere in the line of like, hey, what do I get for these bonuses, like the Spirit Combustion? That's where it'll basically tell you what your stats are. And yeah, so I do have every class. Let's just run down it real quick. Dark Knight is accuracy. Mystic, I think, is just DR or some sort of defensive stat. Wizard is accuracy. Kuno, evasion. Lon, I'm not even sure what Lon is, to be honest. Or Tamer. Shy is, I think it's life skill, to be honest. Nova's DP. Wizard and Witch are accuracy. Valk is HP and DR stats. Corsair, honestly, haven't played Corsair enough. Striker is defensive and like DR straight up. Archer is super high accuracy. Ninja, same with Kuno, evasion build. Berserkers are HP, warriors are DR. I think last time I looked, Draconia is like special attack or something. Some of these are like offensive as well, but realistically, the way you check it out, how do you know what you are? Let's look at these stats right here. Right here in the Spirit Combustion, and then sometimes you might have extra. If you are playing Succession, you'll just get more stats. So if you don't know what you are, look there. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it in terms of like artifacts. That's really, it's hard to recommend artifacts to anyone. It's really based on your playstyle. So this is what I use. I have, where is it? Okay, so the ones I have are the magic AP ones, and how you set up your light stones is like really personal preference. I can't give you the right answer. It's really just whatever you play. And for my defensive, because I can't get all DR, I've been grinding for it and it just doesn't happen. I just have 2 max HP ones with full iron wall for extra DP, or DR, I guess. But the game wants to give me all evasion. I don't use it, so I mean, I'll just use it for another class, I guess. But yeah, for Dark Knights in particular, magic accuracy and magic AP are the way to go. How you build a Lightstone combo, up to you. But those are the 2 most common artifacts. But yeah, it really just depends. Like, there are PvE, PvP, and just a lot of other ones, life skills. So hard to recommend any specific combo to anyone, but that's just what I use. So with that said, hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was almost 40 minutes and this is a long video, but thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to drop a quick like on the video. I'm trying to do more beginner guides to help people get into the game. I know you can graduate early for season, so I actually do have a video on that, what to do after finishing your season. So if you want to watch that, it's pretty informative. and I will see you guys later. If you have any questions before I go, feel free to leave it in the comments or join me on Discord. All the links are in the description as well. So hopefully it helps you out. See you guys later.